Well, hello, all of my crafty friends. I have decided that today I am going to come on and do what I'm going to think is a possible series of Can My Cricut Do That? Sometimes we find that there are things that we see online and it uses paper trimmers, sometimes it uses dies, and we wonder if we could recreate some of those things in Design Space. So here we go. I'm going to go into the Cricut Design Space software, and I'm going to first click on our shapes. I'm going to bring in a square, and I am going to go up to the key proportions, and I'm going to unlock that. That makes sure that things are not sized proportionately at this point. Now what I want to create is a square, or a rectangle I guess, that will be 6.75 by 5.5. Of course I'm going to change that to be my favorite color, purple, because I just like to see purple. So then on my X and Y, I'm going to change that to 0 and 0. X is going to move your item left to right. Y moves your item up or down. So now that we have it positioned in the top corner, I'm going to go in and I'm going to bring in a score line. Now this set of score lines will turn into cut lines. And I'm going to position this first one at the X mark of 1.25. Then I am going to take the height and I'm going to change that to 3 inches. I'm going to move the Y coordinate to 1.25 as well. I'm going to go over and I'm going to change that from a score line to a cut line. Now once I've done that, I'm going to just simply duplicate that, and I'm going to move this one to 5.5 on the X and 1.25 on the Y. I am going to take that, and that creates an evenly spaced on at the same Y coordinate. Now this next line that I created, I rotated it 90 degrees first, and I'm going to change the size to 1.5 inches. Now once I've changed the size to 1.5 inches, I am going to place this one at the 1.25 on the x-axis, in addition to 1.25 on the y-axis. Once that's done, you'll see that's going to move all the way up, and here's where I'm going to change the size and make it 1.5 inches. So I'm going to duplicate that again, and now I am going to move this to, I'm going to keep it at 1.25 on the x-axis. So as you can see, every time you hit duplicate, it moves it down and over 1/2 inch. So I'm just having to move that back. So it's going to be at 1.25 on the Y and at 4 inches on the X. That's going to move that over to the right side. I'm going to duplicate that again. And this time I am going to place this at 4 on the X axis and at 4.25 on our y-axis. That's going to bring that down to the bottom. Our flip card is taking shape. Now for this last cut line that we're creating, the x-axis will be 1.25 and the y-axis will be 4.25. So I have not attached any of this yet because we're still working on creating the outline for the card. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come back over here to shapes, and I'm going to bring in another score line. Now these score lines will remain score lines. This first one I will put at the x-axis at 2.75. At the y, I'm bringing it all the way up to 0. Then I will change the size of this. This is going to be a 1.25 inch score line. And then I'm going to duplicate that as well. Once I've duplicated it, I am going to move it to the 2.75 on the x-axis, and on the y-axis, I will be moving it to 4.25. Again, we will duplicate it, and on the X, we will change this to 4 inches, or to the 4-inch mark on the x-axis, and to 4.25 on the Y. And then we will duplicate this one final time, and this last score line will be at 4 inches on the x-axis and at 0 on the Y. So what we have created is a partially cut square or rectangle in the middle of our card base, and then 4 score lines that will help it bend and maneuver. And so I'm showing you today how to create this in Design Space, and tomorrow I will come back and show you all of my pieces and how I actually put this together. So make sure you come back and see. And again, all of these dimensions that I've given you, if you like to use your paper trimmer and things of that sort, please feel free. You don't necessarily have to use the Cricut. I love to use my Cricut to create fun fold and fancy fold cards. So now I have duplicated this because I'm going to use one piece for my card base, and I'm going to use another piece for the panels of my card. So I am going to take this one that I turned white and use that as my card base, and the purple one I'll use as my panels. Since I'm going to use this as my panels, I am going to change all of the lines that were initially score lines into cut lines because I want the Cricut to cut this all the way out, which will leave me with 3 whole pieces, and I can decide to place them where I would like them on my card base and still have the card base maneuver in the ways that I would like for it to. Now, in addition to that, I am going to bring in another rectangle that is going to fit the size of that inner rectangle that we have created. And this is where my sentiment will go on one side and where my stamped image will go on the other side. Now you can choose to make this the exact same size of your rectangle that's in the center. You can choose to make it 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch smaller. I would recommend at least 1/8 of an inch. You will see when I put this together tomorrow that I did decide to keep it the exact size. And when you keep it the exact size, you have to make sure everything is lined up perfectly. Otherwise, it makes it a little bit more difficult for everything to move around. So hindsight being 2020, I would definitely recommend that you at least give yourself 1/8 of an inch. So as you can see, I am taking this back to be the whole size of the image. I am going to duplicate this piece, and I am going to place the other piece will be on the back side of that rectangle. So now we have all of those pieces completed and put together. Now these are going to be 3 different pieces for me in 3 different colors. Now they won't be the colors that are on the screen, but you can choose whatever colors you want. If you did want to make that purple piece and the gray piece the same, then you could, or you can change it up like me. I wanted a floral for the purple piece and a solid for the gray piece. So just choose what you like. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to create my sentiment to go on the back and front, it depends on how you have it flipped, of my card. So this for me is going to be a sympathy card because I did have a very close friend who lost her mother to this COVID-19 virus, and I wanted to send out a card to her and the family to let them know that I'm thinking about them. Now with this piece, you know, usually I like my stacked elements. I like for it to be thick as chipboard. However, with this image, I would not recommend making things too thick. I feel like it would impact how well you could put it together. So here are all the pieces. And usually I would stack it up like 6 times. This time I'm going to do 2 and 1 piece of foil, which seemed to be okay with the finished product. But like I said, you just don't want to make it too terribly thick. So I'm just centering all that together. Again, a different color because I'll be using a different color vinyl on the top. And that is pretty much it. Those are all the pieces to this fun fold flip card that I will show you tomorrow how to put together. So come back and enjoy the process. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.